All right, guys. Hey, welcome to the Monday Morning Wake Up Podcast, the classroom edition. Honored to have you guys on. Hey, thank you for joining, and I appreciate everybody that's in the classroom. We actually have a real classroom setting set in place at the Work Spots location in Apple Valley, but I appreciate you guys tuning in every single Monday, and I hope this serves you well. We sat back and said, hey, you know, if we can kind of get into some practical in-home scenarios, objection handling, phone script stuff, in-home script, or in-home presentation, so you could go out there and you can kind of, for one, I guess, look back at your prior weeks and say, man, I think if I would have tweaked that, adjusted that, I think I'm going to be in a better position the next time I deal with that situation to better handle it, right? Because the thing is this, we're in this room right here. There's not clients in the room next door coming up with new scenarios and situations like, hey, we're really going to get that agent Billy the next time he comes. Let's hit him with this one. That's not happening. So as we continue to progress, I was always convinced early on, I guess what I really hung on to, I guess what I hung my hope on was that as bad as I might be right now, which be clear, in the beginning, I was terrible. And I think some people think like, dude, you're just saying that to kind of be inspirational. No, I wish we had footage back then where you could see me dialing, see me sitting with clients, but I did have this desire and an obsession to get better. And I was convinced that if I saw enough people, ran enough appointments, stuck with it long enough, that success was really inevitable. Like, I'm only going to get better, and the clients are not going to get harder. And so that's what we kind of, purpose this for. So I hope it serves you well every month where this one Monday, we kind of take a step back from the mindset and attitude and thought process and all the other things that we really kind of dive into, because I believe this business is so mental, but I want to give you some practical things. And at the same time, we're going to dive into not just what to say, but we do get into the psychology behind why do we say it. Because if you just know what to say, you'll say it, but it won't be delivered the same way, right? That makes sense? Because you could say something and it mean two different things. Like when my wife's like, babe, how's my butt look in these pants? I could be like, babe, it looks good, and that makes her feel good. Or I could be like, it looks good. It looks good, but and she's like, huh? Like, what did you say? There's just two different things, right? It's the way you say stuff, and the way you say it is dependent on why you're saying it. Okay, so let's get into 3 scenarios. We're going to cover 3. So if you've ever had a client that is young, and they're like 20 years old, they send in a request, and as you're going through it, you're just finding it a hard time building the value, like where they really understand the fact that mortality is real, and that they could die, and what's going to come as far as a result of that. Like you're having a hard time getting them to understand the urgency at the age of 20. Because if you've sat with clients that are 18, 19, 20, you've probably experienced what I have, which is I'm Superman, it ain't going to happen. And that's what they're thinking, and then what they say is stuff like, well, maybe later, or I don't really know, we'll think about it, that kind of stuff. So that's going to be one we'll dive into. The second is this. A client that's got a bulletproof policy. Like you're literally looking at it and you're like, I can't do better than this plan. Well, how do you handle that situation? How do you add a policy to a client that's already got a plan and it's a great plan? And the third one we're going to cover today is somebody that really doesn't have the common or typical need, right? Most people buy life insurance because of income replacement. So no matter if it's a mortgage protection lead, a final expense lead, an instant internet life lead, a Facebook lead, all this stuff's irrelevant. The reality is most people make a buying decision to purchase life insurance because when one person passes, the income drops. Or even if they're single, when they pass, there's a financial burden or hardship that's left to kids or whoever else. So how do you help a client that when they die, there's no loss? Maybe they're retired, the pension is where all their income's tied, and if they die, that's $7,000 is still $7,000. How do you build the value there? So those are the 3 that we're going to really kind of unpack and dive into today on the Classroom Edition. So let's get right into it. The first one is a client that we'll just say in this scenario, they're 19 years old, right? No kids, not married. You sit down with them. What I realize is this. You have to really become a lot better at articulating the living benefit more so than the death benefit, because you got to make it, they're thinking like, what's in it for me? I don't really think I'm going to die. So if you can make it attractive, right? And get them to imagine something that they might not be thinking about, as far as what does your financial situation look like at 55? And the fact that you can die. So they can't imagine it. So what we want to do is create the image that we want them to focus in on. We want to create a picture by giving third-party stories and examples, let them live in it, and then guide them from that. And that's how we're going to do it. So in this situation, we'll use Stephanie as an example. So I'll say, so Stephanie, listen, the benefit is this, like you're 20 years old. And so most clients I sit with, that made you feel good, didn't it? She was like, because she's not 20 apparently. All right, so you're 20 years old. And most clients I sit with that are like 40, 50, 60, they're like, I wish I would have had the insight, been intelligent enough to take a look and make sure I was prepared at that age, so that way I was set up and I wasn't paying 90 times more or not having enough. Like most clients, that's what I hear. So indirectly what I'm saying, and I'm gonna kind of stop as I go through it to give you the points of why I'm doing that, I'm celebrating her decision to even have me at her house, right? And I'm giving her feedback on what most 50, 60, 70-year-olds tell me, and that she's really intelligent, and they wish they would have had the insight to make that same choice to look at preparing and planning for their family. So she's already feeling good. I'm already teeing her up for the decision that I'm assuming she's going to make, which is getting the plan. Now I say, now Stephanie, the thing is this, if you got in my car and you went on all my appointments that I have every day, and I've done this for years, you would literally be wanting to take like Xanax and Zoloft and like put them together and take double dosage at the same time. The reason being is I sit down with so many clients that are like 70, 75, 80, and they've worked their whole entire life. They've now retired, and they're stuck like watching Dr. Phil reruns all day long. They can't go on vacation, enjoy and create memories after all those years. They can't just go buy certain pleasantries. They can't do certain things. They can't leave money when they pass away. They're really just stuck in a position where they have time, but they have no ability to do anything. And it's very depressing. Now, I always like to learn, so I'll ask those clients, I'll say, like, Bill, what would you have done differently? And what I always hear is they say, Paul, I wish I would have saved pennies over the last 30, 40 years so that way I would have dollars in retirement. Every single one of them. And just like every American, every client, they had created some kind of savings, and then things popped up that they either wanted or needed, and they just took it all out. And then they start building it back up. After 4 or 5 years, something comes up, and they take it all out, and that just repeats until one day they wake up and they're 65 years old. I'm meeting with them to help them with life insurance, and they're stuck. They could afford $60 a month for a plan, and it's the most important thing they could do is not leave a burden for their family, because it's the single most important thing that somebody could have. And so they get it, but they have no money. Like they have to cut out like certain food that they're going to eat to afford a plan, but it's that important. Okay. Now what I'm doing is I'm creating an image of like, now the client that's 20, they're thinking like, that does sound like it sucks. And I can see how that happens. Heck, I think my parents did that. They saved and then they spent and all that kind of stuff, right? So I'm getting them to kind of see all that and get them to visualize it. I'm also saying like, they don't have any money, but they still figured a way to put this in place because it's the most important thing. So I'm also highlighting through third party how important this is, because at 20, you don't think it's that important typically. Now I said, now the great thing about your situation, Stephanie, is because you're like under 30 or whatever age you want to pick, because you're only 20, you can get a plan in place that really kind of helps ensure that doesn't take place. You can structure a plan where you have it for 25 years. So you have the premiums paid each and every month for 25 years. At the end of 25 years, you get 100% of your money back, like a forced savings. So the great news is you can't just go grab it out like an available savings account, which is why most people end up watching Dr. Phil reruns, eating top ramen, right? It's a forced savings, so every month it comes out. You can't access it, it's there. But in 25 years, you get that check back. So Stephanie, when you're like getting close to 50, you get that check back, and you could use that to pay the house off early and save $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 in interest that'd be working against you in those latter 5 years. You could use that to pay down any other kind of debts. You could use that as a source of income, but it allows you to step into retirement with a better financial blueprint. Do you see how that makes sense and how valuable that is? Now she says, yes, I do see how great that is. I say, perfect. And I say, also, Stephanie, the thing is this. I know right now you're not married, you don't have kids, but odds are like that'll probably happen down the road. And because of your age now, the amount of protection you can get is so much higher than what it would be in 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, that you can lock in a big amount. So when you do pass, if it's in 12 years, 15 years, and you do have the family, you're able to leave them so much more because you set up your savings now. And that's such a big benefit as well. And I don't know, Stephanie, if you're anything like I am, but when I was 20, I didn't see, like I hadn't, maybe you have, but I hadn't had a lot of people close to me that had passed away. But then all of a sudden I would look on Facebook and I'd be so shocked with somebody I went to high school with or somebody that I knew, or maybe I knew somebody that got in a car accident, and all of a sudden it was that it was it. And I would have never thought. I was like, I can't believe that person's not here no more. It would just shock me. And so what I realized is that we never know when it's going to happen. And most clients, Stephanie, even that I have that are 20, a big desire they have is to make sure when they die that they don't burden their parents or their family with expenses, that it's covered. And so that's something that you also have in place when you look at putting that plan in place, because it does that as well currently. And so what I'll do is I'll go through the different options and see what makes the most sense. We can't qualify it, but once we find a good plan that does fit, what we'll do is we'll send it to the carrier. We'll hope that they come back and give us a yes. We'll get an initial approval, hopefully right away. But once we have that plan in place, you'll be set up to have that forced savings and to make sure that everything's set up just like we were talking about. Does that make sense? She says yes. So that's how you kind of articulate the value with somebody that's young. And all I'm doing is I'm telling like a story, right? I'm celebrating her decision to look at it. I'm assuming it's already a done deal, because why would you not? Most people regret not doing it. You don't want to, she's now thinking like, I don't want to be that 60-year-old that's watching, I don't even like Dr. Phil, so I'm going to have to start liking Dr. Phil reruns, and I'm going to have to watch them all the time because I can't do nothing. So I'm creating all that vision, right? And then talking about what it's going to look like to have it. Like, it'll prevent that from taking place. You'll step into retirement with a better blueprint. You'll be able to pay the house off earlier. You can pay off other debts, and you can ensure that your income is going to be maximized as you go into retirement. At the same time, you have the benefit of making sure that if you do die down the road, you've got the most coverage to leave because you're so much younger now than you are in 10 years. And eventually it's going to look different. But in the meantime, you've got a savings that's getting set up now to build what you want to build, to have what you want to have down the road. Does that make sense? All right. So that's how I handle that. The second one is this. A client that has a bulletproof policy. So in this situation, let's just pretend that the client's 70 years old, right? Maybe they got a plan, or instead of 75, they got a plan 15 years ago. They got a whole life plan, permanent protection. It's going to last forever. Let's just say it's $150 a month that they're paying for 200 grand. So it's a really good plan. You know, based off their health and everything, for $150 a month, what you're going to show them is like 20,000. So they got 200 grand for what you're going to show them at 20,000. So what do? What does that look like? So let's dive into that situation. So we'll use Alyssa. I don't mean to make you the 7-year-old after I did that with Stephanie, but I mean, you guys are both here. And you got a good self-image, so you're not going to worry about it. All right, so client's 5 years old. So I would say, so Alyssa, listen, I sit down with a lot of families, and I've done this for quite a while. It's very uncommon that a client has a policy set up like you. And it's pretty cool for me to see because it's so uncommon. Your plan you have is really good. Like, whoever helps you set it up and structured it the right way. And as a field underwriter, because I look at all the guidelines and carriers and options, I look at all of it and I can assess each client situation, really find the best fit. Most sales reps that are out there sitting with clients, they kind of don't do that. They're in it for themselves, and a lot of times it's not the right plan. And so just telling you as a field underwriter, third party, like, this plan, don't ever let it go. And I say that because I've had clients I sit with and I go in and I'm like, show me your plan. They say, well, the one I used to have or the one I have now? And I'm like, well, both. What do you mean? They'll get it out and somebody came in, a sales rep, and they replaced a plan that was so much better because they wanted to make a commission check. So as a field underwriter, I'm just telling you, don't ever let anybody touch this. Okay, so what I've done right now is I've built significant like and trust with the client, because that's not what they expect. They expected me to say, this plan is not any good. You should go with the plan for me. That's what they expect, right? So now I've made them feel so good. And most people are always kind of living with the whole, did I make the right decision, right? Like the buyer's remorse, a little doubt, did I really do? And so now I've made them feel great about something that they made a decision and maybe they've been questioning for the last 15, 20 years, right? And now I'm tied to that good feeling, okay? So once I've done that and I've set it all up, I'm on the right playing field. I've celebrated what they've got, which is a big deal. Then I can say, so listen, most clients that are set up like you are in this kind of situation where you've got a great plan, what I always, I guess being the fact that I've done this quite a while, is most clients still have like 3 or 4 or 5 policies. In fact, I've had clients myself, which makes me do so much of a better job communicating it now, that they'll call up and say, hey, 7 years go by, I want to add another policy. Or I look at their policies and they've got like 4 from like every decade, And the reality is this, with your income rate and situation listed right now, like everything's fixed, right? You know exactly what's disposable and what's affordable, fair enough? They're gonna say yes. So I'll say, what most clients do is they realize that they're not gonna go out and buy a Lamborghini. They're not gonna go out and buy a bigger house. Like what they're really concerned about is their quality of life is good. It's gonna be the same, they're okay with it. They wanna leverage their legacy. Like they wanna take what they have coming in and leave as much as they can. That's kind of what their concern is, not what I can get, because everything's fixed, is what can I leave when I pass. And so what most clients in your situation look at is they'll add additional policies and what have you. And the reality is this, in 7 years, if you add another plan, you're gonna get half of what you would get if you added it now. So what I always tell every client, you know exactly what's sustainable, lock in as much as you can afford because you know what's disposable, and then never think about it again. Like this plan right now, you never wanna touch it. And I know I'm out here because you were looking at the options and protection. Whatever you can afford, lock it in and never think about it again. Anything is gonna strengthen your situation. Anything is. So it's not the amount of coverage, it's what is disposable instead of having to go into checking or savings, or some clients say, Paul, I just blow it. Like it literally is so useless, I just blow it. I'd rather have a plan where I know in my mind when I go to rest that that's gonna bless my kids or grandkids or do this or that. And that's where they get that pride and peace of mind in. And so what I'll do is I'll go through the different options, Alyssa, to find a plan that's gonna be sustainable, but we never wanna touch this. We wanna do one more ad and never think about it again because you're the youngest you're gonna be today. Does that make sense? She says yes. And I say, so for you, what's kind of sustainable? Like what would be sustainable each month? Like $50, $100, 200, so we can keep it within that, because anything's gonna help out in addition to this great plan you've got. She says $100. Okay, well I just sold it for $100. Doesn't matter if it's gonna be 10 grand or 15. It's gonna leverage the legacy. It's gonna help aid in that situation. Now this is the same thing that you could do if you sit with have you ever went in a client's house, you go through everything, and somebody else with FFL has already sold a policy? Have you done that? Okay. So for me, like every week, that would happen with Andrew. So we both had the counties. We both had different vendors. He'd have MelPro, I'd have LeadCo. He had LeadStar, I had ARM. I mean, like every week, I'd have a client that Andrew was just there. And every week he'd have a client where I was just there. Because the client filled out both requests, we're both really good on the phones, we'd both get in the house. Now, if I called up the client and say, hey, I got an appointment with Andrew tomorrow at 2, I would edify Andrew and leave it alone. A lot of times they don't remember who their appointment's with, right? You say, I got one at 2, okay, do you know who's coming out? No, I don't, somebody called me. That's typically what you get. They said Andrew was coming out, say, hey, listen, this is all the same stuff. You're probably gonna get multiple phone calls. Let me just be transparent with you. Whoever calls you, just tell them you got it taken care of. Andrew, I don't know who he is, but he'll get you squared away. And now I just teed up Andrew. His close ratio is 20% higher because of me. That's the way it should be. We're a team, right? Now, if I went out and Andrew just left the day before, they pulled out, Andrew sold it, all right? This is how you add an additional policy the same exact way. I don't care what he wrote. I don't care if I thought what he wrote wasn't what should have been written. And I'm like, dude, you should have done this. I would still make them feel good about whatever they had. I'd celebrate it, and then I'd go right back into the whole other options, finding additional opportunities, finding an additional premium. And guys, I could tell you 100% that when I sat with the client after Andrew, I would still close 80% of them because he wrote Bob and I'd write Mary. Or he wrote Bob a plan to cover income replacement and I wrote Bob a final expense life insurance plan to cover his burial. He wrote Bob mortgage protection. I wrote Bob income replacement because the purpose behind the death benefit is what they tie it to. So it's different boxes. That's why you could go and make so much more income and help so many more clients by doing annual reviews. I mean, I wrote $400,000 in 1 year off reviews without taking a lead because I'd sit with the client. For one, they were so excited to see me because they didn't expect to see me. Because usually when somebody sells something, they're gone. So it was already like the best appointment ever as far as like rapport, connection, how the kids, this and that. You know, it was just so easy. But I'd make them feel good about what they got. Even though I sold it, I'd make them feel good about it, just like I did with Andrew. And then I would ask additional questions, paint additional pictures, the same way, third party. You know, like, hey, Bob, you got this plan in place. Looks like Andrew helped you with making sure if you died, this is going to be covering the mortgage and protecting equity here. By the way, Bob, if anybody comes out and tells you this is not a good plan, don't listen to them. And I do the whole same thing. So now they're like, I love that guy. Because they didn't expect that. And they were still doubting, like, did Andrew write me the right plan? I don't know. He looked kind of sus maybe. I don't know. Maybe he was good. I don't know if I trust. All that kind of stuff, right? So I'd do all of that, and I'd say, let me just kind of go through additional questions, but I think you guys are pretty much good. You know, Bob, do you have anything for your burial? Well, no. What do you mean? Like, do you have anything at the funeral home? Well, no, I don't. And then I talk about through the funeral home what that looks like, right? How much that costs, and how most clients in your situation, Bob, that have the mortgage, they want to have something that's going to cover their funeral expenses, because the reality is this: when you don't wake up tomorrow, if that takes place, or in a month or year, when that happens, because not if, when it happens, the first thing that, Mary, you're going to think about is, oh my God, like, how do I go through the day? Like, every bit about your whole life is tied to your spouse. Like, when you wake up in the morning, there's a routine, there's expectation, you know what to experience, whether that's them drinking coffee at the table or whatever. Right away, that's all different. It's an emotional devastation. But that same day, the problem is most clients are stuck with, how do I pay for final expenses? That's their first thing. Not how do I pay the mortgage, how do I pay the bills, it's how do I pay final expenses? So Bob, most clients in a situation, they want to have a plan that's locked in at your youngest age. That way you're not 82 years old paying, thousands of dollars a month for it, and that it's locked in and it's good to go. And so I'll show you some different options, but I think you would agree it probably makes more sense, like most clients feel, to lock it in now, not wait until you're either gone and that burden's there, or when you're older, it just costs so much more. Does that make sense? Oh yeah, absolutely. And then you just walk right into it. And so that's how you look at that. Even you can look at an additional policy. I'll give this one, it's kind of more in depth. But I remember Andrew sitting with a client, wrote him a big, rolled over an annuity, right, that the client had, wrote him like $30,000 of life insurance. I broke down, basically, most annuities will pay out like around 6% on the amount you put in for life, right? So if you put in $100,000, they'd pay the beneficiary like $500 a month for life, depending on the age, but roughly, right? So with this client situation, I broke down the death benefit that they had, how much the annuity, because Andrew wrote him a lifetime income annuity, what they were going to lose in income when he died, and how much income his spouse was going to get from the annuity, and if we put the death benefit into an annuity as well. and we found out that she would get like $500 less a month. So I helped him get another plan for $50,000 for guaranteed income replacement. And I did that by making him feel great about what he did with Andrew, because I didn't say I know him. I just said, I don't know who this Andrew guy is, but I'm telling you what, like, he did a really good job. Now, what if you're like, that agent, maybe you go behind, it's a newer agent, and you're like, man, they wrote him AIG and the client was healthy. Well, that's probably not the right fit. It's not your job to replace it. It's your job to call the agent afterwards, have a conversation with them, and let them go back out and write that additional and replace that policy. But you can still add something to what they've already got. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So that's kind of how you can handle that. Additional policies are great, even if they've been sold before, if they got a bulletproof plan, or even off annual reviews. That's kind of how that's applicable in all those three different situations. All right, last one is this. So client doesn't have a need. You draw out the financial inventory, you get all the information there. They already have a life insurance plan that's good, right? The income is pension, $7,000 a month. When Bob dies, Mary gets $7,000, no loss. So how do you handle that? What I used to do was I would try to be like, well, if you die, you want to make sure there's more for your wife, right? Like they're good, like they have more protection. And what I would get is like him defending the situation, and almost kind of like, we don't need this, like, and it would be more of that, okay? And so it was combative, and I was trying to poke a hole where there was really not a hole to poke. And so that would cause a response I didn't want, that didn't aid me in adding or helping him with the plan, right? So what works was this. I said, Bob, listen, man, again, goes back to celebrating their decision. Bob, I'll tell you this much, man. I sit with a lot of clients, and you might not, this might not mean a lot coming from me. Maybe it does, but I do have the experience of sitting with families all day, every day for a long time. And it's very uncommon that I sit with a client that's taking care of their wife the way you have. And man, it's just, to me, it's what I desire to do. It's pretty cool to see. And Mary, you got to feel pretty good about what Bob's done, because it's not common. Typically, what is common is when one passes, the other spouse becomes like a impoverished spouse, meaning that the income drops, lifestyle changes. It's a struggle. And Bob, you've prevented that from happening, man. It's pretty cool. And then I pause. You want to talk about, like, Bob loves me. He's like, it's about to be a good night at my house tonight, dude. Thank you, Paul. I appreciate the assist, because like you see what I'm saying? Like, I built him up, and Mary's like, she maybe took it for granted. Maybe she doesn't even know. But now she's like, wow. So I've got them in an emotion of love, right? Now they're like, appreciate each other. It's phenomenal. And guess who they're tying the emotion to? Your boy, Paul, right here. I'm doing the work. I'm the Cupid in this situation. But this is what you got to do. This is what works. And so then I say, listen, Bob, most clients in your situation, so now I'm going back to the herd, right? You got a great situation, got to feel great about it, and now I'm going to go back to, so, Bob, basically, most people in your situation, so I don't see a lot, but everybody that I do sit with that's got the same setup as you, that's the setup. If you don't do that, now you're selling, right? I'm just telling. I'm like the counselor, right? The free counselor. I'm not a sales rep. Everything about what I'm doing, they don't even tie to that. They tie to like advice, feedback, counsel, right? So I say, so everybody in your situation, Bob, what they tell me is like, what they're looking for is they've already have a good situation set up. They're like, Paul, I just really want to strengthen what I've already got. I want to try to do my best to strengthen what I have in place already. So when I go, it's that much better for my wife. Because it's not like a dire need or what have you. So really what they're looking for is just to improve and strengthen what they've already got. Is that fair to assume that's kind of what you had in mind as well, Bob? Like most clients, just to strengthen what you already have? Well, what do you think the answer is going to be? Yes. Now the thing is this. Your job as a producer, as an agent, is to transfer your thoughts and ideas in such a way where the client picks it up and they believe it's their thought and idea, because then they'll be moved to take action on that. That's what your job is to do. All right? So when I articulate that to Bob and say, most clients, this is what they do, that's what I'm doing. Okay? I'm creating a story, letting him see it, and then be moved by it. So Bob, most clients in a situation, they're just looking to strengthen a position. And then as a producer, if you could see the question, I know the answer to it. Like the questions you guys ask, they need to be rhetorical. Rhetorical in such a way where if they say something different than what you're looking for, it actually doesn't make any sense, and it's hard for them to say it because they'd make themselves feel like kind of ignorant by saying it. So if I say that and he says, no, not really, Paul, I just filled out the form because I wanted you to come out and validate me. I appreciate you doing that, man. Or, you know, Paul, I don't really want to strengthen my position. I just wanted you to come out and just talk to me or just drop off some information. That makes it almost a possibility to say because it doesn't make any sense. And it makes him feel like, man, I feel kind of ignorant even saying this. So my question is going to get a rhetorical yes. Now, once he says it, I'm good. Now I'm just helping you with what we've identified, and what you said was what your need was, which is just to strengthen your situation. So once he says that, I say, perfect. So I said, Bob, listen, because we're looking at strengthening the situation, what I always tell every client is like, you don't need to have hundreds of thousands of dollars that's out of what you want to, set aside to strengthen it. And so it's not so much about the death benefit as much as it is just what you want to put aside, because anything is going to strengthen the situation. Anything is going to improve the situation you've already got. So for you and your family, like, what do you think is sustainable? What do you want to set aside to strengthen it? Like $200 a month, $150, $150, what does that look like? And then he's going to tell me the number. I don't know, Paul, because he already feels great and already loves me. I think like $100 a month would probably be about what I want to be. Okay, great. So then I show him the benefit, and it doesn't even matter. I'll say, great, that'll be able to strengthen the situation and add, depending on the age, maybe he's 74, 20,000. Or maybe he's 45, or usually it's a pension situation is typically, so usually it's like 20 grand. But I'm not going to get pushback like, man, that's not enough, right? Because oftentimes, if you don't handle it like this on a client that when they die, there's no loss of income, and maybe they have a mortgage, if you show them 20 grand, they're like, that's not enough, I don't want that. And it's hard to sell them on something's better than nothing because they don't need nothing. You see what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So oftentimes I try to do that. I'd show them 30 grand because that's what they could get based off age and health. And they're like, I don't want that. I mean, that's not, I want to pay off the house. But when you do it this way, it has nothing to do about the amount. It's anything's going to strengthen it because you really are in a great situation. That's what every client does, is just say, look at what they want to put aside just to strengthen it. She says $100, you show them 20,000, so great. Bob, that's going to add an additional 20,000 in tax-free money to leave to Mary. So when you pass, she's in that much better of a position. So let's see if we get you qualified here. Go ahead and grab a driver's license. It's assumed because he said that's what he wants a lot. He agreed he wants you to strengthen it, and then you move forward. So that went from a situation where, man, I hated it. I look at it and I felt great about their situation for them, but I was like, I'm not going to be able to help them. And be clear, everybody needs more protection. I've never met any spouse that they're like, man, my husband, he was a jerk. Why? That fool left me way too much life insurance. Like what was he thinking? Rude, That's not the case. So you adding additional protection in place, it does strengthen it, and it does leave more to Mary that she could use for kids, grandkids, all kinds of different things, and it's tax-free. So those are the ways you handle those three situations. And I hope what you guys see from a standpoint of the psychology behind it is that the psychology is pretty much the same through all three. The approach, I guess the framework to how I handle all three is pretty much the same framework. There's slight adjustments, like one might have a flat roof and one might have peak roof. But the framework is about the same. Celebrating, right, and moving forward. No different than if a client's got a plan through the mail that goes up every 5 years. You still celebrate the fact that they got the plan, not this goes up every 5 years. Did you know that? This ain't any good. Whenever you're making them feel bad about their decision, they're tying the feeling of feeling bad about the decision they made to you. Opposed to like, listen, Bob, this plan is actually a really good plan, but with life insurance, there's risk. So you have guaranteed issued, high risk, medium, low risk. And so really as a field underwriter, my job is to try to figure out what's the best risk class. This plan right here is perfect. What I suggest if clients got cancer, congestive heart failure, things where they can't get protection, because at least it'll help you. And some clients will say, well, Paul, it goes up every 5 years. This is terrible. I'm not gonna be able to afford it by the time I need it most. And the answer is like, well, I hear you, but it's better than zero, right? So you see how I'm not beating it up, I'm letting the client beat it up. The third party client beat it up. But for you, Bob, do you have cancer currently that's terminal? You don't? Okay, great. Well, I think we might be able to get you into a plan that's gonna be better risk, risk classified for you. In fact, Lemur says 80% of Americans, they have a great plan, but they're paying more than they should, not because the product or plan's bad, it's just covering conditions they don't have. And so let's see if we get you in a plan that covers just what you've got and nothing more, and maybe get a plan that doesn't go up every 5 years, because I think you might be able to qualify possibly. Do you see how much better that? It's the same framework. It's the same framework. So guys, I hope this helps. Let's go out there and make it a massive week. Make sure to share this. I believe that there's been many times where I share content where I'm like, man, this served me well. And I get somebody to reach out and say, hey, appreciate you doing that. That podcast or that really helped me a lot. And so I think everybody inherently wants to make a difference. They want to make an impact. They want to be of value to people. And maybe a simple share gives a value, or it's an expression of the value that you want to give. Like, comment below every single week. Casey does a great job at the end finding somebody, and I didn't even know it was always different. I watched it the other week and I saw James back there picking the winner, but choosing the winner for the free leads. And so comment below so we can put you in that contest, and let's go out there and crush it. Realize that, hey, if it's not looking good right now, that's okay. If your week had a lot of no sales last week, that's okay. Had a lot of no shows, that's all right. But plug in and get the right information in front of you so you can tweak and adjust and close in on the deviation between what you did and how is a way to do it. And if you do it long enough, guys, it's inevitable to be successful here. I promise you, everybody that's been here for 3 years, no matter how their first year looked, they're making a lot of money now. They just didn't give up. They just continue to get better. So get better today, grow today. Let's go attack today. Make it a massive week. Be strong. Stay steadfast. Take care. Bye-bye.
What's up, guys? It is time once again to give away $250 in lead credit. If you commented on last week's video, which is right here, you're automatically entered to win $250 in lead credit. So what do you want to do right now? You want to comment right down below on this video for your chance to win next week. Guys, it's literally that simple. Just leave a comment. You can win $250 worth of free leads, which you can turn into $20,000 later on. It's such an easy investment to make. So, what are you doing? Leave a comment. I'll give you time. I'll give you like 5 seconds. Okay, now that you left a comment, we're gonna see who won this week. Raylene Chardon. Thankful to start this amazing week with the right mindset, focused on God's goals and abundantly grateful for God bringing me into Family First Life with its amazing, plentiful bounty of training and unlimited income potential. Thank you, Paul, for all that you do to keep us focused on the right priorities and the giver of all good things in life. That was a really cool comment, Raylene. Thank you for that. But you just won $250, which is amazing. And that your comment, it made us happy, it gave us encouragement, and it uplifted us, and we're glad that this podcast is uplifting you as well. Get in contact with Victoria to claim your leads. Her number's going to be right down here. Guys, just leave a comment like that. Just share what you're getting out of it. It's that simple, and you could win $250 in lead credit. Until next time, guys, we will see you next Monday. Take care.